If I'm a little late in calling. She is the co-head coach of the 8th-ranked softball team in the country. We're talking to Karen Weekly, who just came in with her Lady Vols and trounced ETSU in a game. I mean, even Rick Wise couldn't really compete with this in terms of a team level. It not only was a no-hitter, but you had, Haley Bearden hitting 2 grand slams, not 2 home runs like Rick Wise did back in the day, but 2 grand slams in the victory. 11 runs on only 3 hits. That is really maximizing your efforts right there, Coach. Hey, but I want to ask you this, and you've probably been asked this before, but you are a co-head coach. How does that work?
Well, it takes a lot of work, really. My husband and I have been co-head coaches ever since we came to Tennessee. We're in our 18th season now. We've been coaching together for about 25 years, but co-head coaches since we've been here. I think we do a good job of dividing our responsibilities and staying out of each other's way most of the time. Fortunately, our strengths and weaknesses balance each other out, and the things that I really enjoy doing are the things that Ralph probably would just as soon I do, and vice versa. So, but, it's hard to ever get away from the game because when we're at home, we find ourselves talking about softball nonstop. So it's pretty much 24/7 with us.
Okay, wow. Some people say leave it at home. Now I understand why you're number 8. You don't want to take the losses home with you. Hey, I want to ask you this, Karen Weekly, though. You mentioned that both sides, that you're both contributing in different ways. I have heard of this concept before in some high school sports. I know a girls' soccer team that I once used to cover, and there was a coach who was a Englishman, and he would come out and he would bring like sweets and sort of put the game plan in for the team, and the other co-head coach would make sure that the players remembered all their equipment and such. So there was a little bit of nice guy, bad guy in there. Is that sort of the way that you guys run your team, or could you describe the roles there? I am kind of curious about this.
Well, I think there are distinct roles in terms of, he works with the hitters and I work with the pitchers. We've both done, hitting different times in our career. Ralph calls the game and manages the game, the substitutions, and, when we're going to bunt, when we're going to hit run, those kinds of things.
Okay.
I call the pitches during the game. The jobs we handle off the field are different as well. He's a really good big picture kind of guy. I really enjoy the one-on-one teaching at practice and things like that, and just kind of getting down to the details with the kids. So in that way, we balance it well. Good cop, bad cop, I would say. It's never one person always being the good cop and one being the bad cop. That can kind of change depending upon the situation and the player involved. But we definitely try to balance that out so we're both not coming on strong at the same time, so the kids always feel like there's somebody they have to go to for that pick-me-up.
Well, we're talking to Karen Weekly, and you know what? I mean, I've heard about this. I've talked to some football teams that have tried this, co-head coach, an offense coordinator, a defensive coordinator. So what you say about hitters and pitchers makes a lot of sense right now. Hey, I do want to ask this. I guess what we've heard with the Lady Vols and women's basketball recently, and it caused me to sort of look at the history of the Tennessee Lady Vols, if you will, all the programs. And it seems to me that one of the reasons why Tennessee was able to be so good early on in the, let's say, women's sports era was that they were ahead of the curve in Title IX. That was something that Pat Summitt really pushed for. And I wanted to say, do you feel that there's any trickle down to the softball program? Because, Tennessee is regarded as a pretty decent softball school. Do you see that being ahead of the curve back in the day on Title IX may have actually helped you out even in this era?
Oh, most definitely. That's one of the reasons we came to Tennessee, one of the reasons we've always stayed at Tennessee, one of the reasons all of our women's sports have been successful. And certainly that began with the administration here, the presidents of the university, way back in the 70s and 80s, and then Joan Cronin and Pat Summitt there was always a commitment to women's sports and to the female athlete, and we felt that the first day we set foot on campus for an interview. And, Pat had a ton to do with that, and she just demanded that the women on her team be treated just as well as the men. But the really neat thing about Pat was she wanted all of the female sports to be successful. She wanted all the sports to be successful. She never wanted women's sports to be successful at the expense of men. She just felt like there was enough to go around for everybody. And she did everything she could to help us succeed and really helped us in softball. She was an instrumental part of us recruiting some big-time athletes to the softball program, and, we'll forever be indebted to her.
Now, forgive me if I am asking more general questions of you here, Karen Weekly, but I think it is kind of intriguing about how Tennessee was ahead of the curve, both in women's basketball as well as softball. You're ranked number 8 in the country right now. Traditionally, softball was a sport out west, let's say. And even now, the top 3 teams in the country, Oklahoma, UCLA, Washington. And I wanted to ask you just what kind of a challenge it was to create a softball team out east that could become a powerhouse back in the day.
Well, it was certainly a challenge early on, but, we set our sights to compete nationally. And when we came here, that was something we decided. We wanted to close the borders and keep all the best Tennessee players in state. But we also wanted to recruit nationwide. And we had some good contacts in California through Ralph's involvement with the U.S. national team. He was the coach on the first 2 Olympic teams in 96 and 2000. And so, we recruited California heavy. And we got some no's, but we got some yeses too, and some really big yeses. And kids like Monica Abbott and Lindsay Scheffler and Christy Durant and some of those early teams that we had here at Tennessee. So the thing about the SEC and Tennessee is when the SEC decides to do something, they're going to do it right. Mm-hmm. They're going to put the money into it, and that's why you've seen the SEC explode in softball and in any other sport that they decide to sponsor. And Tennessee sells itself. If we can get a young lady on campus, she's immediately blown away by the beauty of this part of the country and how friendly the people are and what an outstanding academic and athletic university that we have to offer. So as soon as that plane hits the ground, we feel like we've got a great shot at them.
Well, they've been friendly to you with me. Well, we won't go into that here, Karen Weekly and all this. But as you say, hey, in the top 10, there are 4 SEC teams, Alabama, Florida, LSU, and of course the Lady Vols. And if you want to go to the top 15, then there are 6, including Auburn and South Carolina as we speak. So you meant what you say about the SEC. Yeah, the ahead of the curve, if you will, in softball out east. Hey, one of the things you did mention, if you have time for one more question, is the development and keeping the Tennessee players in state. Now, Haley Bearden obviously is one of those players, but I noticed that you don't have any players in the Tri-Cities. I'm curious, what is your opinion? You've got to scout it. The Tri-Cities softball area in terms of competition against other metropolitan areas or so. What do you think of the level of play here, and does it need to improve?
We're going to go recruit anywhere where there's good quality players. Mm-hmm. And quite honestly, when it comes to the state of Tennessee or really any region in the country, we don't really focus so much on where that player is from in particular. Most of these kids now go play on travel ball teams that may not be in the same area, may not even be in the same state. And that's really where our recruiting starts. Mm-hmm. We don't really have an opportunity to get out and see much high school ball because we're playing the same time they are. So the key is for the young ladies to be playing in competitive club travel ball programs where we're going to see them play against the best talent in the country.
And that is,
so if there's a young lady in the Tri-Cities area that's doing that and she's excelling at that level, we're going to be on her.
And that is pretty much what a lot of, all sports really. If it's basketball, it's AAU, baseball, softball, travel ball, even football. You will have the combines. Although I still think that what you do on the gridiron in high school counts for something here. All right, she's Karen Weekly, giving us a few minutes of her time here, the Tennessee Lady Vols. They were in Johnson City. By the way, are you going to keep the ETSU series?
Oh, we love coming up there. I'm sure it won't be an every year thing, but, we go back a long way. Brad, I don't know Brad coached with us down at Tennessee, or excuse me, UT Chattanooga. And way back when I was a professor at UTC teaching business law, Brad was a student in my class and started out as a manager for us. So we certainly have some history, and we think he's done a really good job up there at ETSU, and I think you'll see us up there in the future.
There you go. Well, hey, you hear a lot about in Tennessee, the coaches, they teach classes. How often does that happen in college? Well, it has happened for Karen Weekly here. She is the head coach of a team that is 33-8 down in Knoxville. Thanks for joining us here on Tri-City Sports Now. Telling us a little bit about the ins and outs of the Lady Vols softball program, and just a little bit on how it started, and some of the ins and, like I said, some of the ins and outs after your impressive victory in Johnson City. Tri-City Sports Now. We will continue after this. Okay. Well, thanks. I hope I didn't hold you too long. I know they said 12:25 and it's 12:29, so I will let you go, okay?
My pleasure. Thank you.
No, thank you. Bye-bye.